Hi friends, what if I told you that this bowl of greens could quietly be protecting your brains if you eat it, even if you were born with a gene that increases your risk of dementia? Now, would you eat it every day? Or would you rather not think about it, not get tested, and just hope for the best? A lot of people think that they need to get dementia testing, especially the ApoE4 gene, the one that Chris Hemsworth found out that he has 2 copies of. But let me ask you a different question. Do you actually really need a scary gene test to start eating and living in a way that protects your brain? Or would you rather know exactly what to put in your plate every day to tilt the odds in your favor, regardless of your genetics? Now, Chris Hemsworth, he learned that he has 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene, which increases his risk of getting dementia. And that made headlines. About 25% of people carry 1 ApoE4 allele, and fewer than 3% carry 2 alleles. Now, I'm all for data when we can do something helpful with it. But here's something that most people miss. About 40% of people with Alzheimer's dementia, they don't have even 1 ApoE4 gene, not even one. So in other words, sure, your genes matter, but they're not the whole story. And for most people, that's not the problem. It's not even close. And just because you inherit the ApoE4 gene, even 2 copies, doesn't mean you're destined to get dementia. For me, that means this. I don't need everyone to rush out and get genetic testing to see if they're at risk for dementia. And frankly, you can't swap out your genes, but you absolutely can change your exposure to toxins, inflammation, regulate how well your blood flows, how high your blood sugar goes, and what you eat. That will either protect your brain or harm it. That's where I want everyone to focus on. So let's shift the question from do I have a dementia gene to am I living a way that quietly erodes my brain or protects it? Because I've seen both. I have a friend who literally is my age, who has the same birthday as me, who already has dementia. Now we think of dementia as an old person's disease, but not everyone gets dementia as they age. And not everyone who gets dementia is old. Now, I've met people in their 90s and even past 100 who are as sharp as a tack. They can even hold a conversation, remember details, crack jokes, and stay emotionally present with their families. Those are my role models. I want to be like them, not just for me, but for my kids. Because if you've ever taken care of someone with dementia, you know that that is not an easy journey. And I'm sure you know how heavy that burden is. And I say that not only as a physician, but as a daughter. My mom had dementia, and I noticed her signs years before anyone else. And it took years for them to believe me. The little things, like losing her keys and then accusing me and my brother of hiding them, getting lost on her way to my house, even though she had driven it for years, and then slowly losing her ability to keep her home organized and clutter-free. These were the quiet early signs. And I still remember one day she called angry and panicking because she couldn't find her car keys. So she felt trapped in her home, and she was yelling at me over the phone as if I had taken them. So I drove over to help her look for them, and it was just right there. It was on the floor next to the chair. And at the time, everyone wanted to explain it away as, oh, that's just mom. She's just growing old and getting a bit forgetful. But I knew something deeper was going on, and I too tried to ignore it. And over time, the clutter got worse. She got lost even more often. And later, after a procedure to remove a pretty simple fibroid, she developed a multi-drug resistant urinary tract infection. Now, if you've ever had a urinary tract infection, you know it's not pleasant. Well, she was in pain, but she didn't tell anyone. And in her mind, if it hurt to urinate, well, she'll stop drinking water so she won't have to urinate. That logic made perfect sense to her at the moment, but not drinking meant that the infection got a chance to spread even faster. So by the time I picked her up that one day, she was already septic, she was having a fever, she had a racing heart rate, and she was about to crash. I rushed her just at the nick of time to the emergency room, no thanks to her doctor, who didn't even have a blood pressure machine to check her blood pressure. And if your doctor doesn't even check your blood pressure, you may want to consider finding a different doctor. And although she survived, her cognition never returned to where it had been. Her dementia accelerated downhill, and it felt like I lost part of my mom forever in those few days, because I did. So when I speak about dementia, it's not theoretical. I've actually lived the life of a caregiver. I've lived through questions like, why didn't we catch this earlier? I've replayed all those choices in my mind. What if we did this or that? What if we had intervened brain earlier, right? What if we protected her from some of the toxic exposures that she had in her environment? And that's why this video isn't about scaring you with genes. It's about empowering you with tools. Tools that you can use through your food and your habits to start using your environment to protect your brain, even if dementia runs in your family, and even if you never got that genetic test. So here's a framework to keep in mind. Dementia almost never is from just one cause. It's a result of many small insults over time. Heavy metals, pesticides, chronic infections, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, head trauma, high cholesterol, poor circulation, lack of sleep, and no movement or very little movement, dehydration, and yes, sometimes even your genes. But it's more like epigenetics. Something in the environment turns on those dementia genes. Otherwise, you should have been born with dementia. So today, we're going to walk through several of the biggest toxic insults that the modern world throws at your brain and the foods and habits that help your body fight back. Think of it as two columns. On one side, the exposures that silently damage neurons, and on the other side, the foods and the habits that help your brain detox, repair, and stay resilient. So let's start with heavy metals and oxidative stress because they're everywhere. You got lead, mercury, arsenic, and other metals. They all accumulate in your brain over time. They can lower IQ in children and increase dementia risk in adults. Why wouldn't they? We're made out of the same matter and it does the same thing in our brains. You don't need a dramatic industrial spill to get exposed. Tiny amounts add up. And that's why my first brain protective food is eating enough cruciferous vegetables, number one. This is literally number one on my list. This is kale. And this is my favorite kale, Latino kale. But you can also eat broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, and other members in the cruciferous family. Now, cruciferous vegetables, they ramp up your glutathione redox system, which is your number one detoxification system. So it's your body's primary defense against oxidative stress. They contain sulforaphanes and related compounds that tell your cells that turn on detoxification enzymes, mop up free radicals, and better handle insults like heavy metals. The problem isn't just that we're exposed to toxins, it's that our defense systems are underpowered. Now, cruciferous vegetables, they help power them back up. Now, that doesn't mean we should shrug off toxic exposures and rely only on vegetables to bail us out. We still need to reduce the burden wherever we can. So, lead, for example, used to lurk in gasoline, paint, plumbing, and dust and soil for decades. And when I was growing up in Los Angeles, leaded gasoline was still being used. So the air pollution carried tiny particles of lead that settled in our nose and our lungs and dust in our homes. In older homes, lead-based paint was used before 1978. And as paint chips and peels, those flakes become a hazard on the floor and in the soil surrounding the home. And it doesn't really take much to elevate a child's blood lead level because it's supposed to be zero, right? And it's extremely harmful for the development of the nervous system. That's part of the reason why Asian households, we don't wear shoes from the outside to the inside, right? Dirty shoes track in dirt and soil, and in that dirt can carry lead, as well as, let's say, pesticides and other toxins. And be careful not to be planting your edible garden vegetables right up against older homes because the soil can be contaminated with that lead paint. And then there's that old device you might have heard of, don't drink hot water from the tap. Historically, that was to reduce lead leaching from the pipes because hot water dissolves more stuff. But even now, in the newer homes where I have plastic, I still follow the rule. I use cold water, let it run briefly, and heat it separately. It's a very simple thing to do, but over decades, these little habits reduce your load of toxins, whatever is dissolving in the hot water. And now, if your pipes are plastic, you're gonna have to worry about microplastics. So a good filter is probably useful. Next on my list are brain protective foods like number 2, garlic. My dad, he loved garlic. He swore by it. He ate it with everything. He would bring raw garlic bulbs to work for lunch and he would carry them even into restaurants because whenever he asked the restaurant for extra garlic, they would be kind of stingy for him. And when he didn't have enough, he would pull out his own garlic in his pocket. And throughout his life, he was pretty sharp, even in his old age. age. And I remember as a kid, he rarely ever got sick. As an adult, I realized that he was actually onto something. Garlic is rich in sulfur compounds like allicin and contains selenium, both of which support your glutathione detox system. Now, historically, garlic was known as the Russian penicillin. And during World War II, when the Soviets ran out of antibiotics, guess what they used? Garlic. So long before modern antibiotics were invented, cultures around the world, they had to use plants or something else to help them fight infections. And many cultures discovered that garlic was useful for infections, for coughs, for joint pain, skin problems, and even wounds. There is a trick to using garlic as medicine. Raw garlic actually burns. So when my dad tried to train me as a kid, just letting it touch my lips set my lips on fire, so I refused to eat it. But as an adult, I have learned to tame it. And you don't want to deep fry it or bake it at high heat because that will destroy the allicin. Now, the best way to preserve the allicin is to chop or crush the garlic and let it sit for a few minutes to allow the enzyme reaction to create more allicin, and then gently heat it or roast it in its peel. You can spread the soft roasted garlic over whole grain toast. You can mix it with soups or stews, and then you can get some of the benefits without burning your mouth with raw garlic. And it appears that people who regularly consume garlic has been shown to experience fewer and shorter common colds. It's likely because these compounds, it travels through your respiratory tract and it can make it a less hospitable environment for germs to hang out. Garlic also helps to modulate the immune system, dampening excessive inflammation while enhancing protective responses. For brain health, that really matters. Infections and chronic inflammation are all major accelerators of neurodegeneration or brain rot. Now let's talk about another toxin, glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup and many weed killers. So when I was growing up, my mom had a large garden and she would periodically spray Roundup when she got tired of all the weeds. And she didn't use a mask. She didn't use any gloves. She was just spraying. I'm sure she inhaled some of it, got some on her skin, and to her, it just felt normal at the time. Well, glyphosate has been linked to various health issues, including potential contributions to neurodegenerative diseases. Now, I'm not going to say that that was the only factor in my mom's dementia. That would just be too simple and ignoring all the other factors in her life, but I'm sure it didn't help. And that's why I avoid using any weed killer or pesticides inside or around my house, because whatever you spray will land on surfaces around your house, in the dust, in the air, in the soil, and ultimately in your house and on you. However, cruciferous vegetables with a lot of garlic can help you detox some of these burdens. But my philosophy is don't bring in more than you have to, right? Keep it simple.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
The third toxin I want to talk about is arsenic. And the food here that's number 3 on the list is turmeric. So arsenic is a natural element that you will find on the Earth's crust. But modern activities have been concentrating it. So mining, fossil fuels, pesticides, wood preservation, electronics, lead additives, and even some pharmaceuticals all use arsenic. And it contaminates groundwater in many regions. So in the 1990s, UNICEF, they built shallow tube wells in Bangladesh to provide clean water that wasn't full of visible mud and pathogens. The water was crystal clear, but inevitably arsenic in the groundwater poisoned millions of people because you can't see arsenic and they didn't test for it. Arsenic is tasteless, it's odorless, and the lesson is pretty sobering. Water can look clean and still carry a carcinogenic neurotoxin. So anything that depends on water can technically grow and concentrate the arsenic. And rice is notorious for that since it requires a lot of water to grow rice. Rice absorbs about 10 times more arsenic than any other grain. And animals that live in the water, they're not exempt either. So seafood can contain lots of organic arsenic too. If you smoke or live with a smoker, you're inhaling arsenic. And our oceans, that's where seafood comes from, right? It's just a giant global toilet bowl system full of pollutants, arsenic, and microplastic. Well, we're all exposed. I grew up eating a ton of rice and seafood food, and my mom did too. No, I don't know exactly how much of that contributed to her dementia because we never measured her arsenic levels. Many doctors don't think about doing that. But when I learned about how rice concentrates arsenic and how poor rice is compared to other whole grains for its nutritional content, I made some changes. So these days, I rarely eat rice, especially white rice, as there are so many other grains that are so much more nutritious. If I do eat rice, I treat it like a treat, not as a staple. And I know lots of people in America who rely on well water. You may want to have that tested, folks. The good news is, this is where turmeric comes in. Turmeric, and especially its active component curcumin, is the most researched spice in the world when it comes to inflammation and oxidative stress. That is, fixing those two things. Curcumin has been shown to help repair DNA damage in people exposed to arsenic, reduce their oxidative stress, and modulate their inflammation. It supports liver detox pathways and interacts with the gut microbiome in a way that favors beneficial bacteria. It doesn't neutralize arsenic or make it safe, but it helps your body cope with some of the damage arsenic causes. There is a catch. Curcumin isn't easily absorbed and doesn't stay in the body very long. And that's why traditional cuisines pair turmeric with black pepper, ginger, cumin, cinnamon, and some form of fat. So basically, that sounds like curry, right? So peppering and black pepper actually increases levels of curcumin in the blood because it inhibits an enzyme in the liver. Now, the fat in the dish can help increase absorption, but if you're going to eat saturated fat, that may actually counteract what you're trying to do. So heating turmeric gently in whatever oil that you're cooking with also will help. So if rice is that important to you culturally or practically, you can at least reduce the arsenic content by rinsing it thoroughly, cooking it in extra water, and then draining that water to add fresh water. I would still eat it with turmeric-rich dishes to support your body's repair process. So let's also talk about water itself. Water is the largest source of arsenic exposure for many people. We can't avoid water. We're literally made out of water. The average person needs at least 2 liters a day, more if you're sweating and exercising, or if you're sick with a fever, huffing and puffing, or you have diarrhea, or you're losing fluid from some other reason. And filtering your water through a water filtration system can actually remove many of the heavy metals and arsenic, but you should periodically check your water quality to make sure that it's legit and good. And this is one of the most important steps that you can take for your long-term brain health. I don't think it's safe to assume that just because you're supplied by a city, that's going to be perfectly safe. You know, good people make mistakes and systems actually can fail. People can accidentally allow contaminants through. And so it's prudent for all of us to have a home water filter to make sure that we are controlling and eliminating the toxins that surround our environment, because this is an investment in your brain health. Now let's move to number 4 on our food list, green tea. My dad drank tea his entire life all day long. He had a big mug that I think it was meant to hold beer, but he used it as a tea mug. And he would pour hot water with tea leaves multiple times a day. Green tea is rich in catechins, especially EGCG, epigalactocalcin gallate, which is a powerful antioxidant that can cross your blood-brain barrier and protect your neurons from oxidative stress. It also contains L-theanine, amino acid that helps you be calm and alert. Green tea does have a little bit of caffeine. Historically, Japanese samurais drank green teas to prepare for a battle because it sharpened their focus without making them jittery. L-theanine actually increases calming neurotransmitters and alpha brain wave activity, which is associated with relaxed focus. And it can smooth out the effects of caffeine so you get clarity rather than a spike and a crash. Now, the combo of EGCG and L-theanine and caffeine in the green tea can improve attention, mood, and possibly even stimulate neurogenesis, the formation of new neurons, and strengthen synaptic connections. This is all fancy speaks for it's huge for learning and retaining memory. And for my mom, as her dementia progressed, we encouraged her to drink tea in the morning to support her brain and to get a bit of a structure in her day. But we try to avoid caffeine too late because her sleep was already disrupted. And she would already stay up beyond midnight clicking on the internet, downloading viruses on her computer, despite promising that she wouldn't. And of course, sleep. disrupted sleep can worsen dementia. So we had to work very carefully with not giving her caffeine later on in the day. Now, if you're using green tea for brain health, think morning and early afternoon, not late night. Number 5 on my list is a whole category in itself, Anthocyanin-Rich berries. I make it my job to get these into every day as often as possible. Blueberries, which is number 5, black currants, number 6, black raspberries, number 7, and elderberries for number 8. They are all deeply pigmented, and that pigment is why I love to eat berries. When I see that color, I know that fruit has high anthocyanin content. Anthocyanins are powerful antioxidants that improve blood vessel function, lower blood pressure, and support cholesterol balance, reduce DNA damage, and it supports your brain health. Now, blueberries have been shown to improve memory in both older adults and younger people. And don't forget your dog. They can safely eat blueberries too. But when it comes to anthocyanins, blueberries are actually not the champions. Black currants actually have more anthocyanins than blueberries. Many Americans confuse red black currants with the little dried currants at the store, which are actually just raisins from a specific grape. Real black currants come from the ribes family and have a tart, tangy flavor. They were once banned in parts of the US because they can spread disease to white pine trees. But many of those restrictions have now been lifted, and they're now grown in the Pacific Northwest and Northeast. Then there are black raspberries, which contain even more anthocyanins than black currants. They're harder to find fresh, but freeze-dried black raspberry powder has been used in studies with impressive results for vascular and cancer-related outcomes. Now, I personally think anthocyanins are so important that I literally consider eating them every day with every opportunity to make up for the years that I ate pretty bad dorm food, junk food, and, medical school and residency food. You can add wild blueberries, black currant juice, black raspberry powder, and elderberry extracts into your daily routine like me. Now, elderberries have almost 4 times the anthocyanin content in wild blueberries, and it's been used for centuries as a form of medicine, from basically ancient Egypt to Rome to the Europeans. Now, elder trees were even said to have protective, kind of magical properties. However, people would eat them with caution because raw, unripe berries and other parts of the plant actually contain cyanogenic compounds. So you don't want to eat them raw off the tree. Generally, people eat them in properly prepared syrups, extracts, or in cooked forms. Clinical studies have shown that elderberry extracts can reduce the duration and severity of common colds, which indirectly helps your brain by reducing inflammatory insults. Now, let's talk about your brain structure itself. Your brain is about 60% fat by dry weight, and the type of fat does matter in your food. You need omega-3 fats. You also need some omega-6 fats. They are essential fats, and they help to build the myelin sheath, the insulating layer around your neurons that allows the electrical conduction system to stay in your neurons and not shock your entire body, right? Without that myelin sheath, the signaling won't travel quickly or efficiently. You won't be able to remove your hand from a hot stove. Now, think of it as that plastic protective coat around electrical wires in your house. Without it, you touch the wires, you'll short circuit something, maybe your heart, right? So most people don't eat the proper ratios of omega fats, and they're eating too much omega-6 fats. And yes, they're from seed oils, processed foods, but they're severely deficient in omega-3s. And the ideal dietary ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is around 4:1 or less. Many modern diets, however, are closer to like 15 or 25:1. And it's heavily skewed towards an omega-6 rich diet. And excess omega-6 in the wrong context can be pro-inflammatory and crowd out omega-3 in cell membranes. So where do omega-3s come from? Cold water fish, algae, flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts are major sources. Some animals that live the longest, like certain whales, they're swimming in cold water and they're constantly moving. They are high in omega-3 intake. Movement and diet are tightly intertwined for longevity. And for humans, adding ground flax seeds, walnuts, and if you choose, low contaminant seafood, can help move your ratio into a better direction. That helps not just your heart and arteries, but also your myelin, your synapses, and your mood. Now, exercise might not sound like food, but I consider it to be brain nutrition. So it's number 9 on my list. If you exercise at least 30 minutes 5 times a week, you significantly lower your risk of dementia. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go run marathons. Even walking, that counts. The problem is most people aren't doing enough, right? Many of us, we don't even walk 3,000 steps. We're barely doing anything in the day, just kind of going to the refrigerator and the bathroom. We were supposed to be walking at least 7,000 steps. That should be like the minimum goal. And believe me, I am part of the problem too. When I first started tracking my steps, I was stunned at how little I was moving. So I've been making it a game. I park the furthest away. I take the stairs instead of the elevator always. And I walk while I wait for my son for pickup. I have no idea why people are turning on their exhaust, burning gas, and then smelling it sitting in their car. We should all just turn it off and then go take a walk. And each year I look at other creative ways to add more steps because I want to hit 1,000 to 2,000 more steps daily than the year before. Movement, it gets your circulation flowing. So it supports neurogenesis, improves insulin sensitivity, it lowers blood pressure, and it literally changes the structure and function of your brain in a good way. And finally, number 10 is hydration. Your brain is about 73% water weight, and dehydration, it impacts memory, attention, mood, and overall function. Now, it doesn't take severe dehydration to feel cognitive effects. Mild dehydration is enough. Exercise, hot weather, fevers, diarrhea, and even just breathing faster all will pull water outside of your body. And, you may not be functioning too well, even if you're a little bit dehydrated. And unfortunately, as you grow older, your thirst is not particularly accurate when it comes to hydration. And when you're dehydrated, your blood becomes more concentrated, it becomes thicker, it travels more slowly, your blood pressure may rise initially, and then it will dive when you're more dehydrated. And then your brain cells obviously will suffer. Now, simply drinking enough clean water and sometimes adding electrolytes rather than just guzzling plain water can make a noticeable difference in how clearly you think and how well you remember things. At this point, you might be thinking, this is a lot of information. Genes, metals, arsenic, pesticides, garlic, turmeric, tea, berries, omega-3s, exercise, and water. Where do I even start? Now, the point is not to feel overwhelmed. Instead, we should be feeling empowered. You don't have to fix everything all at once. Maybe your first step is just to add some cruciferous vegetables and garlic to your daily routine. Maybe it's swapping one processed snack for a handful of berries. Or maybe it's testing your water supply and make sure you're getting the best filter. Or it could be simply counting your steps for a week to see where you are and how active you are daily. Every one of these changes nudges your brain towards resilience rather than fragility. And remember, signs of dementia typically begin years, often 10 to 20 years, before a formal diagnosis. Dementia doesn't just show up suddenly. It creeps in slowly through subtle changes in mood, personality, energy, organization, and memory. And by the time it's obvious to everyone, so much damage has already been done. That's why the best time to start protecting your brain is not when you're 80, it's now, whatever your age. And I think people underestimate how easily they can get hydrated. And if you're curious about hydration specifically, what to drink, when to drink, and how to hydrate in a way that actually supports your body and brain, watch the next video.